I went through some significant anxiety, and I couldn't set foot in a church for years. Like, just even going to like a funeral or something, I was just like, I don't even want to be here. Like,
okay, so in this video, you're going to hear a conversation about the church, being burned by the church, leaving the church, and potentially coming back to the church. So hopefully it's helpful for you. My name's Rob, and this is
Rob.
We are the pastor and the prodigal, and we shot a beautiful episode last time of me interviewing Rob. It was phenomenal, and it was very emotional. Rob broke down and cried a couple times, and the audio didn't work. So we're gonna redo that and put Rob back through a lot of pain.
The meat grinder. Sweet.
All right, so we're literally reshooting this video. So this is what we talked about last time. We're gonna do this again. Talking about Rob. We'll let him give his background and how he kind of left the church and is thinking about coming back. So first question for you, Rob, what's your history with the church?
My history, it's a little spotted. I don't know. Grew up pastor's kid, went to church a lot growing up and didn't like it, of course, as you're a kid. You want to play outside or watch football growing up and all that. But, under the impression that I was a Christian and all that, and just because I had been going to church and yada, 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 went to youth group and all that, and then just kind of, once it became an option, I stopped going. Okay, so then when I was around, was just about 20, 21 years old, I moved to Florida. And that's where I really learned, about partying and having fun and just really, rage. And there's this whole, I wasn't sheltered at all, but there was this whole thing that I had always wanted to tap into that I didn't know existed, and that's where I really became extroverted. Actually, I was a bouncer at a big nightclub down in South Florida. I used to live in Fort Lauderdale, and I used to be really shy when I was younger until I opened up and got comfortable with people. Well, working at that nightclub really forced me out of my shell. So now I'm like the monster extroverted person that I am now. But yeah, dude, got tired of the partying out there, burned out big time. Just moved back and knew that I had a bunch of, I'm big on life trajectory. And if I wanted to achieve the goals that I had for myself, I couldn't be a bouncer for freaking 20 years or whatever. So moved back, buckled down, went to school, got plugged in with the church and was really actually dialed in. That's where I really reached out to the Lord and was really struggling and was really solid, was going to a church out in Orange County. And then we had a buddy who was a friend of ours, and then he got on the ministry team, and then suddenly he became he felt like he had to be our spiritual leader. And so then he became really weird, and we were all supposed to go on a trip internationally. We spent a lot of money and stuff buying the tickets and stuff, and 3 or 4 days before we go to leave, he tells one of our buddies, "Hey, dude, you can go, but you just can't stay with us." And we're like, "Bro, we're going to South America, and the World Cup's going on down there. That's part of the reason we're going." And so it's he's not going to be able to find a hotel. Everyone's flying all over the world. This guy's being totally a dick, and he's being totally unrealistic. Well, I kind of stepped in and was like, "Hey, let's solve this." I think it's Matthew 11 or 12 that talks about if there's a issue in the church, take it to the elders, take it to a pastor. And so he was really resistant to that, did that, and it ended up he was lying. He was making up lies about me and telling them that I was being really antagonistic and really aggressive and cussing him out and stuff, which back then I didn't cuss at all. I didn't drink at all. I didn't do nothing. I was really dialed in.
Wait, this was after Florida though?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I stopped drinking. I stopped everything. Yeah. And I was just dialed in, man. I was going to church 2-3 days a week and just stoked. You know what I mean? It was awesome. I just wanted to serve, dude. I've never really been a guy who's hey, look at me. My personality might reflect that, but I genuinely just love interacting with people. It's never I want to be at the front and stuff. So I was actually basically the manager of the coffee ministry on Sunday nights there, and it was awesome, dude. I was just stoked to be there, dude.
So you're managing the coffee ministry, and this guy that you're talking about who was being a jerk, he was on staff there?
Yeah, he was basically the guy who ran that Sunday nights ministry.
Oh,
that
right,
was
yeah.
what he did.
Yeah.
And so he was really passive aggressive and there was a lot of cowardice, really.
And was he one of your roommates? Were you living with him? Or
a good buddy of mine. Actually, he was roommates with your brother.
Yeah.
And a few of those guys.
Okay. So you didn't live with him, but you interacted with him a lot because you're serving
Always.
where the place where
Yeah.
he's overseeing.
Yeah, and I was always at the house because I lived like a street or two away. So I'd ride my bike over there and we'd hang out all the time, dude. Have Bible studies, and it was pretty bitchin', dude. I liked it a lot. It was a lot of like really good accountability, you know. And but yeah, dude. Then he just like basically pushed me out of that ministry, and it was a crappy situation because, like I was saying last time, like there was a lot of talk about like family. You know, oh, we're a family. Love you, brother. Da da da. Like this basically Christianese nonsense. What it ended up being. And it was just like once this happened and he basically pushed me out of that ministry and I was crushed, dude. Like I was reaching out to people, hey man, like can we hang out, da da da, and they would just blow me off. Like it's, oh sorry dude, you know, I'm really busy. But then they're at freaking Disneyland with their little girlfriend like 3-4 days a week, and it's just, it was a nightmare, dude. It really crushed me, and it took me like, I want to say almost 10 years to get back in the church and I'd be able to be comfortable going to church again.
And you said your last time you talked about how you're adopted.
Yeah.
And so for you, it was like, oh, I know what being brought into a family is like and having a real family. And so when you got involved in that church, it felt the same to you, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was, everyone seemed like just, it seemed great until, I don't know, I guess it wasn't convenient for them, or I don't know, but it was pretty shitty. Yeah. And that was really like, I went through some significant anxiety and I couldn't set foot in a church for years. Like just even going to like a funeral or something, I was just like, I don't even want to be here. Like even at the church I'm at now that I've been going to, like kind of on and off, I'm a little streaky. I'll go like 3-4 Sundays in a row and then a couple Sundays, you know, miss. I'll either forget or whatever. Yeah, it's just even with that, it's like I don't want to get too close. I don't want to get too involved.
Right. Yeah. So you were part of this church, and you felt like, oh, this is great. I'm part of the family. And then one of the leaders there is kind of gets your number for whatever reason. Yeah. And then what was the process like? Did they kick you out of the church or?
No, I mean I was basically like forced to leave almost. Like I'm not a shit stirrer, but. Yeah, it was rough, dude. Like, it was basically because I disagreed with him. He had a history doing this. Like, if people didn't live like, he was one of those guys that had like he's got the direct line to God. And if God tells, like one of the things he told us is that, and I'll never forget this, dude. It's a very scary place to be. And that's when you know somebody's a piece of crap and they're missing it big time, is he said, I don't care what all those pastors said. If they told me that I needed to leave and what I was doing was wrong, I would have left with my head held high knowing that I did what God wanted me to do. That's a scary, gnarly position if you're reading the Bible at all. Right. And you have all the elders, these guys who've been, not that it necessarily makes them, these guys that have really well studied, but also like been walking with the Lord a long time and pretty, you would think pretty solid. But if the general consensus is, dude, you're in the wrong, dude, this isn't right. And you're so prideful that, oh, well, God told me to do this, so my head's held high and I'm doing the right thing. I don't care what everyone else says. Right. That's not a place of, that's not a good, healthy spiritual place spiritually,
Yeah, I think that's a common experience with people who get burned by the church. A lot of our listeners, if you're into things like this, you probably listen to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast about Mark Driscoll. And it's the same kind of story where he starts getting this power. And at first he started out like a great dude, like wants to serve the Lord and great pastor. And then he got more attention and more popularity. And then he started getting more power. And then he said, like, I'm the dude in charge now. I don't care what the elders say. And that's when everybody got burned by the church.
Yeah, that was a hard, like big time crash and burn. And it sucks, dude, because it's such a shame. I mean, I'll never understand, but I mean, it says a lot about somebody when you give them power and control. It's funny watching people change. I mean, people say, oh, when people get money, they change. I think it's the power that comes with the money that changes them, because all of a sudden you have access to all the stuff you didn't have before. And it's just weak men given power. Yeah. It's weak.
Yeah. So it's crazy because like that's the situation that happens in the church. That's the way the church is designed in America. Like, oh, this pastor's great or this church is great, and they get all this attention and money, and popularity, and because they're sinful people, and they should know that more than anybody.
Yeah.
Like it ends up harming the sheep, and so it sounds like you were one of those people. Like you kind of got burned by the church.
Yeah, and there were still some great people at that church. There was one pastor that I kept in touch with and actually grabbed. We talk every couple of years or whatever, but still a super solid dude. And it just sucks that to see that organization, like the lack of awareness by the leadership on that one individual, and because he was kicking other people out. And it wasn't really something that I was aware of till afterwards for like little stuff. If you weren't doing things
you weren't
his way,
the only one that
no, yeah. So looking back retroactively, like I was like, oh crap, like because people would leave, and I was thinking, oh, it was just. But then you start piecing stuff together, and it was because they didn't feel like the guy didn't feel like they were being a Christian in the way that he thought they should be. So he would basically kick them off of the I mean, dude, I just want to make coffee and serve the Lord, dude.
Right.
Like that's what hurt me so bad, and I was so mad at God for so long. Is that, dude? I'm not a like boastful guy. I'm not a dude who wants any kind of attention. I am here to make freaking coffee, interact with people, dude. Just be loving with these people, and praise the Lord. And it's like, dude, why was I felt like I was punished for it.
Right. So knew that guy. You knew him well before that happened. He was roommates with my brother for a time. You guys were going to plan that South American trip up. Did he like? What do you think changed? Because it seemed like beforehand he was like a chill dude, like a normal guy. Like he was one of the homies.
And not even a dude who was like squeaky clean his whole life. That's what cracks me up is the lack of humility with that.
Yeah.
But I think it was just the power. It was almost immediate. Once he got that position, suddenly he felt like he had to be the house's like spiritual leader, and like we were already dialed, dude. Like we're super accountable, holding each other to accountability. Like we're not partying or anything. Mm-hmm. We're sitting there having Bible studies, dude, on Friday and Saturday nights. Like what the heck? Like that was the safe place where everyone came and all the other people from church and the young people and stuff came and hung out, dude. It wasn't like we were, having keggers, like, but the guy, it was one of those guys that he was always going to find a fault. And that's one of the things that frustrates me the most about the American church is the lack of grasp of the concept of God's grace. Like, dude, it is not anything that I or anyone else does. Like we've had this talk with the way I'm living and the struggles that I'm having. First of all, it's frustrating as heck because I would love to get back in the church and get dialed in there again. I'm hitting like roadblocks. It's weird, but also it's just the lack of the understanding of the concept of grace. Like the fact that I'm even here right now. Mm-hmm. Why? I'm not living my life to the best to further the kingdom and stuff that I know I should be doing. I mean, I'm struggling. I want that. I'm working towards it. It's a battle. I'm not just laying down getting steamrolled, but it's like, dude, why? Like that's just grace, dude. And it's grace that I'm even, where I am right now. There's nothing that I did that I deserve to be here.
Right.
And I think a lot of people miss that, especially people once they come from a troubled background and then they get saved and then, all of a sudden they feel like they're, oh, well, now I've seen the light and I know the right way to live. So it's my job to make sure that everybody, like, you're not the rod, dude. They think they're the rod that corrects the flock. You're not, dude. Mm-hmm. So it's like they take it upon themselves to do that. And I think that American church is missing that big time.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic that you point out. Like I feel like I've seen that a lot. I feel like I've noticed that in my own heart. Like I have a story, where like him, I was running away from the Lord, but then it's just so fascinating to see like in my own heart, I'll look at other people and have like a Pharisee's attitude toward them, like, oh, you need to pull it together. It's like, dude, I was way worse than that guy,
Yeah.
And God showed me, like you said, such abundant grace. Why doesn't it as easily flow? Our pastor, visiting pastor this Sunday is going to preach on that parable of Jesus where the guy's forgiven like 70,000 talents, I think it is, which is like literally trillions of dollars. And then he goes to his friend and like chokes him out. He's like, give me that 30 grand you owe me, which is not an insignificant amount of money, but compared to trillions of dollars, it's nothing.
Great analogy.
Yeah, and it's just, it happens a lot. And people, when they're in the church, it's this double-edged sword because the leaders are supposed to be like pictures of Jesus. They're supposed to be like, when you look at that guy, or especially the pastor, the elders, it's like, God has called them to like be the hands and feet of Jesus, share the message of Jesus, and like you said, the message is radical grace.
Yeah.
And then you see these dudes who have received that grace, who are supposed to be the messages of Jesus, just being complete jerks and not showing it, and people get burned from the church.
Yeah, it sucks, dude. And one thing that I was always critical of a lot of the American church, and particularly I feel like this group of churches is used to struggle with. They've gotten a lot better, to my understanding, as of like the last like 7 or 8 years. But the pastor worship, dude, is just I want to puke, dude, because like in my industry and stuff, like working in the automotive industry, I've hung out with a lot of pro racers. My sister works for a professional sports team. I've hung out with athletes. Just our family's always hung out with, like, my sister and I, just with musicians. You realize these people are just people.
Right.
With me, it's more of a curiosity to see, hey, this person, you see him in the tabloids and stuff a lot. You see him on social media. I'm curious to just know genuinely how they are as a person.
Right.
But I'm not the Mr., take a picture guy or anything. But it's like these pastors get lost and these people get lost. It's like they're looking for something to worship. And I think these pastors need to do a much better job. I mean, of course they stand up there, hey, it's not all about me, but this is happening, dude. Like, you need to crush that.
Right.
They're not crushing it.
Right.
I think they're almost from a spiritual plausible deniability standpoint, where they're up there, oh no, it's not all about me, guys. It's not about me. But internally, I think a lot of them maybe just, they're not crushing it. So
right.
It's there. Why aren't you doing more to stop it? Is it feeding something in you?
I think part of it's dishonesty, but probably a bigger part of it is just ignorance.
Yeah,
and
could be.
That's why Jesus set up the church so that he's the only head guy. There's never supposed to be a church where it's like, there's one guy who's in charge of us. Like, when you look at Acts chapter 6, there's a group of people called the elders, like we said, who are in charge of the churches, which is why we're different from Roman Catholics. You're like, we got the Pope and what he says goes, and you get the bishop and what he says. The bishop can show up on Sunday. He's not even part of this church, and he can change whatever he wants, and he's the bishop. He's
the man.
But it's like, that's not biblical, and the reason it's not biblical is because we're all totally depraved.
Yeah.
And we get that to that position, and we can say it's not about us, and we can believe it's not about us, and then when people like puff our egos up, we don't even notice that we're like, oh yeah, thank you, keep it up.
It feels good, man. I mean, I'm not saying they're horrible people because of it. It feels good, okay? Especially as men, dude. Being like the positive affirmation and reassurance is something that we naturally just do well on, you know? But when you get in situations where it's a lot of people like that, it can be potentially dangerous. And
right.
One of the dudes I will say that I've come across multiple times, dude, that has always struck me as the nicest guy is Ryan Reese.
Raul Reese's
yeah. Super cool guy. Like, I've been walking out in a parking lot with your brother, actually, and a couple of our friends following a church thing years ago. And he's like, hey guys, like, you guys mind praying for me real quick, dude? Like, I've got this thing in my throat. I feel like I've got a sickness coming on or whatever. And so we sat there and we shot it with him for a little bit, prayed with him, and we're just hanging out. And like, that's a dude, like, he seems to have a lot of humility and understanding of like, dude, it's not about me, you know?
Yeah. So, I think that's part of what, like, we're talking about this church conversation and getting back in the church. I think it's one thing to look for, like, for people who are looking for a church and considering getting back in, like, run from a church that seems like it has like this one celebrity pastor, or there's like this little cult around the pastor. Because even if it's like, well, it's not that bad, like he's got his little groupies, but everybody else is okay, like it's gonna get worse. Like the groupies will grow.
Facts.
Like there's a guy at our church actually who was part of a little house church, and it seemed fine. And like the lead pastor, like he had like, I don't know, 50 people in this little house church, and he was really charismatic, and he would do the worship and the preaching and the Bible study, and he would like write his own worship songs, and everybody was just like, oh, isn't he great? And it got kind of weird because he would be like, well, this week we're singing this new song that I wrote, and people would be like kind of praising him for like these songs he would write. And so it started to get into like this little culty thing. And then as the years go by, fast forward to the end, this guy at our church left because it literally turned into a cult where this guy is having the wives come to his house for like midnight worship type stuff, and they will spend the night at his house, and they'll drink like a lot.
That's weird, dude.
While he's sitting there jamming, and he's like controlling their lives, telling them like when they can go home, what they. I mean, he's become this
for
cult leader.
disaster. Yeah,
It
nuts.
started with this like this is kind of weird, and then it devolved. Same thing with Mars Hill and all these kind of things. So. Yeah, if you're looking at a church and it's like it doesn't seem like there's a group of men who are in charge. It seems like this one guy is kind of doing his own thing.
Yeah,
just run.
Yeah, pretty much, dude. And I would say just like don't be hypersensitive, but just like, kind of just keep an ear out. How does the congregation speak about the pastor? And because I've been at some churches and it's like, oh, Pastor so and so, ooh, Pastor so and so, and I'm like, dude, get off him. Like we're not here for him.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of.
And I think
little red flags.
That's kind of inevitable when the church gets really big. You know what
Unfortunately,
I mean?
it is.
When there's 5,000 people there, like you don't know the pastor. Like he's a celebrity.
Yeah.
5,000 people. If 5,000 people know you, you're kind of at like celebrity status.
Yeah.
And so you're a member of that church. Like you're gonna feel a certain way when he walks in the room because it's like.
Ooh,
I've listened to this guy every Sunday for years, and this is the first time I've been in the same room as him, which is crazy to think about. You know, like it makes so much sense for us when we think about YouTube and famous people, but it's like it's not the way pastors are supposed to be.
Not at all. Even famous people. I mean, it's just so weird to me how people just are dying to like lift other people up on a pedestal. Like it's cool that, and we're seeing a lot with politics. Sports and politics. It's cool that you like a specific actor, musician, whoever. They entertain you. Cool. I've got musicians that like a lot of them that I always will, instead of streaming, I will buy their music because it supports them more, and that's dope. But like, if you
don't have like tattoos of them and like wear their clothing,
yeah,
and, like,
dude, that
everything they buy, you buy it,
and for a guy who works in like influencer marketing, dude, like there is a lot of that you have to tap into. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's nobody really that I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so and so. Like I've been from me to you, or even hang out and like partied and stuff with some athletes and people and famous people, and it's cool. Like I just kind of like to hang out, and if we happen to strike up a conversation or whatever, that's cool. But if someone, I'm not the guy to go out and like, hey man, like I'm Rob. You know what I mean? It's just people. I feel like people, and I watch people do that all night. Not that they're like any lesser than me. I'm not some super bitchin' guy, but it's just interesting how people look to like lift up these other people. Yeah, it's interesting.
Earlier you said it's like we're trying to worship them.
Yeah,
I think that's true. Like. So we're talking about how the church burns people, but like part of the conversation, and I'm not blaming you at all, but part of that conversation in general, not in your situation specifically, is that the church puts it on themselves. Because we're like, heck yeah, I want to go to a church with 5,000 people, and I'm never going to meet the pastor, and I'm going to wear a T-shirt with his name on it. You know what I mean? I went and helped with the baptisms that Harvest did earlier this summer. And they handed me it because I'm a pastor and I could baptize people. And and they handed me this T-shirt and it said like Harvest Crusade 2023 Baptism Greg Laurie on the back. Like it's got his name on it. I'm like, weird. Why am I wearing a T-shirt with some other pastor's name on it?
It's weird.
You know what I mean? Like we just do, and it's like when we give him that much authority, like if he becomes a jerk, it's like part of that's on us. You know what I mean?
and the unfortunate part also is if you put that much stock in a man, and we inevitably all have our flaws.
Right.
And that dude like Mars Hill has a hard fault. How many people walked away from the faith because of the devastation that caused?
Yep. Tons.
You know what I mean? And dude.
But it makes you wonder, like, all these people walked away from the faith. What was their faith really in? Like, if your pastor's a complete jerk, like Mark Driscoll, and then you're like, okay, I'm not a Christian anymore. It's like, was your faith in Jesus or Mark?
Well, I think it depends on your reasons. Because I was going to actually, that's a great point because with what I went through, maybe I was putting too much emphasis on the interaction with other Christians. Maybe I was relying on them too much. Not that I was ever like worshiping other people, but maybe I was relying too much on that group to lean on for that accountability because I'm not always around everybody.
Right. Yeah. As a social person, like going to church for social reasons can start to become like the main reason,
Yeah.
Like,
well, for me, it wasn't even so much that it was the social reasons, but I think that for the accountability and stuff, I was leaning too much on that, spending too much of my time just because you can't you're less likely to sit in your room and watch porn or whatever if you're at church hanging out with people and reading the Bible and worshiping the Lord and making coffee and doing all kinds of stuff. So, but the rest of my life, like eventually I move on, I'm not really well equipped to deal with being alone and having those temptations because I've been basically...
You're like training wheels. Once you take the training wheels off, you're like, uh-oh.
I crash and burn. Yeah. I wish it wasn't that hard of a lesson, but I mean, I don't usually learn lessons any other way.
Yeah, I think all of us are that way.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's and I hate to... There are stuff like that, like you just said, with like... Yeah, maybe people were putting too much of their faith in that person, but I also don't think it's right that I find a lot of Christians go, oh, well, it's a no true Scotsman fallacy. Oh, they must not have been real Christians anyway. They must not have truly been Christian or truly been saved because they went through that or they left because of that. Nah, dude, you don't know what people are going through.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just because, let's say I go through a nasty divorce and I'm like, screw it, F this chick. It doesn't mean I never loved her.
Right.
You know what I mean? Oh, he must have never really loved her if he could say that about her. No, dude. Pain does a lot of gnarly things to people, and it sucks. Pain and anxiety suck.
Yeah, I think it's the end of the day that matters. Like I walked away from my faith for a long time and said I didn't believe in God, and then I came back, and so in the moment, like if someone said, "Oh, you never believed in God," like that wouldn't have been true because the proof is I came back later, and it's true but it is true for some people. Like some people leave, and it's like. They weren't there for the right reason. They loved going to church and they loved being there, loved the people, but that's why they were there. Weren't really there for God. And so it's like the Bible says, only God knows the heart. Like man looks on the outward appearance, God looks on the heart. We don't know the heart. We can just see the externals.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when the church burns you like that, when you give, because that's the thing. There's this balance. Like on the one hand, we can give too much weight to the church. You're like, whatever they say goes, and the pastor's Jesus, and I'm worshiping it. But then you don't want to go too far in the other direction. Like, being ordained doesn't matter. Being a pastor doesn't matter. Like, he's just like everybody else. And, like, I take his advice like I take my neighbor's advice. And it's like, no, there's such a thing as spiritual authority. Like, there's this balance there. And that's why the Bible says pastors and elders are going to be judged way stricter, because it's like, Jesus said, like, yeah, listen to this guy. He's the pastor. He's studied the word. He's credible. And then if you steer him in the wrong direction, you burn the people. You have hell to pay, literally.
Yeah, dude. There's a line of millstones with ropes. Freaking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one thing that my dad, being a pastor and stuff, I watched how much work went into it, dude, and how much effort and all that. And I think a lot of people get the false idea that it's just this, I just show up on Sunday and speak and da-da-da-da. And I don't want that responsibility. It's a lot of work, dude, because you think about it, okay? A congregation of, let's say, a small congregation of 100 people. I don't know how many people do you have here?
Yeah, like 100,
150? Yeah. How many of those people have somebody who's sick, health issues, dying, struggling with depression, anxiety, spiritual warfare? There's a good chance, I'd say, if I had to throw a random number out there on any given week, a quarter of them. Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot of people. It was a cool experience because we had a lot of people over at the house a lot. And it wasn't anything to me. It was, so-and-so is from the churches. They would have talks and just hang out and have coffee in the living room with my parents or we'd have dinner together. But that was all just just discipleship and just my dad just counseling people and stuff. And there's a lot of off the clock work like that goes into it that you got to be willing to put in the freaking time for. That same guy, it's funny that we bring this up. That same guy that burned me, I'll never forget. He went out and he met this young kid whose chick was pregnant, and the chick went into labor, and the kid called him and he was like, "Oh, it's my day off, dude. I don't really want to do this." I was like, "Do you know what you're signing up for, bud? You think this is bad? You don't even have a congregation. This is one guy you met on the street and you're feeling like this." Yeah. At one of the biggest moments of his life, he needs a ride to the hospital to be there with his chick, and you're going,
"It's my day off.
It's my day off. I don't really want to go." And he's like, "Will you go with me?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Like, I'll always put my money where my mouth is. I didn't have anything to do that day either. Yeah. But it's like, dude, there's so much like apathy. Like, it's a lot of work. And people don't understand how much work that is. And
I remember when I was going to seminary, I kind of had the wrong view of being a pastor. Like, part of me thought that, it's just this like easier job and like you just kind of clock in and clock out. Yeah. And there was a guy at our seminary who was preaching a chapel. He was a visitor. And he's like, yeah, if you're here to be the like BMW Christian is what he called it. Like,
I love that.
You want to wear your suit and tie and drive your BMW and like this is going to be a nice fancy job for you. He's like, just leave.
Yeah,
that's not
love
what this
that.
is. He's like, look at what Jesus did.
It's a grind.
He washed people's feet. You know what I mean? He was there with them. He was getting dirty with them. You know, the saying is, if you want to be a shepherd, you need to smell like the sheep. You know, so it's not just being this floating on clouds, do whatever you want, but it's like, when they're going through crap, you're going through crap. And the reality is, if there's more than 100 people in a church, there will always be crap.
Facts.
So you, as a pastor, you just live in crap.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's a lot of work, and it's time that you don't necessarily get to spend like with your family. It's an exhausting emotionally and spiritually job because you're pouring out on these people so much. And yeah, it's funny you say that. To be a pastor, you got to smell like the sheep.
Yeah.
To be a shepherd, you got to smell like the sheep. It's like a lot of with the shows like Yellowstone. There's a lot of glorification of cowboys. Ooh, I want a cowboy. Have you ever hung out with a cowboy? Those people hang around horses all day and crap all day, and like they're sweaty and gross, and that's like they think Mr. Tough Guy.
They get their cowboy hat and go to Coachella and like, I could do this forever, man. This is awesome.
Stagecoach, Don't get me wrong, I go every year. I love Stagecoach.
But you know that's not being a cowboy. Like,
well, it's funny because I walk around Stagecoach and I crack up because you got these dudes with their shirts off and their cowboy hat on, and I'm like, bro, I'm probably more country than you are, dude. You hop off and you drive to work on Monday or Tuesday in your Toyota Corolla. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
Cowboy, man. Yeah. But so that's what's crazy though about the American church is like a real pastor is kind of like a cowboy. It's like, if you were around a real cowboy, you wouldn't be like, this guy's so awesome. Just like, he's kind of rough and like he doesn't hold a good conversation and he's always doing stuff. And like he's rough around the edges. Like, I don't really know if I like this guy. Yeah. Like that's kind of, pastors are just kind of like, I'm not here to be patted on the back and float on clouds. Like I'm doing work.
Yeah, dude.
And like, hey, if you just want to shoot the breeze, like, sorry, man, someone's dying over here. I got to go.
Right.
But that's like, in my mind, at least, what a real pastor's supposed to look like. But in the American church, it's like, no. A pastor's supposed to look like Joel Osteen. Like he's always got a suit and tie on, and he's always got a smile, and he's always got this uplifting message for you.
God bless you, brother.
And we're in a big stadium.
He's going to shower his blessings on you. Yeah.
And it's like you can't tell the difference between him and like Tony Robbins or a motivational speaker.
Facts.
And so in America, we're like, that's what the pastor's supposed to look like. And then we like push people, not push, but let people get in that position. And then, like, this guy at the church you were talking about, they have a bad day, and they're like, guess what? You're fired. Get out of here.
Yeah.
And we're just like, oh, man, that sucks.
But it's my day off. I don't know if I'm up for it. Dude, there are no days off when you're a pastor. My dad told me that when I was growing up, too. And it's one thing, like, also, like, that he told me to be wary of, and I have been learning, obviously, this experience to be wary of is, in his words, it was, be very wary and careful around people who don't walk with a spiritual limp. Like people who don't have the humility, don't have the, and my thing is be careful of people who actively want to be a pastor and want to pursue it hard. Oh, I want to be a pastor. Oh, I'm going to go to this Bible college. I want to be a pastor. That's for me. You're chosen to be that. You're not. That's not something that necessarily, and I could be wrong, but. That's the wrong attitude. I mean,
I think part of the reason that's the wrong attitude is because for a lot of people, and this is part of where I was wrong, is like when I thought of like growing up, like it was Tim Keller, John MacArthur, John Piper, Chuck Smith. Chuck Smith was my pastor for like 15 years. I never met the guy. You know, he was my pastor, and I never met him.
When he died, I've got to clean this up.
We'll roast Chuck later. Hold on.
Yeah, all right.
But part of the thing is like we think of pastors that way, and so when it's like, I wonder if I should be a pastor. Like, yeah, it'd be cool to be like Pastor Chuck, my pastor. Like, I never have to talk to anybody. Yeah. I go up on the stage and preach a sermon that everybody claps at after, and like
the attention.
Everybody, everywhere I go, like people are like, oh, there's Pastor Chuck. Oh,
Pastor Chuck.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Sign me up. And then you become a pastor. And it's like, guess what? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like, you tell people you're a pastor on the plane and like conversation over. You know what I mean? And like the job is not like everybody patting you on the back, but everybody stabbing you in the back. And then they get bitter and like, this isn't what I signed up for. And they take it out on the Rob McLogans of the world. But I think part of it is just like, dude, you you were chasing this pipe dream. That's not what being a pastor is supposed
Yeah,
to be.
if someone who wants to chase that, I don't think understands the responsibility and the higher level of accountability.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like. Chuck Smith was a cool dude, and I think he had it right on. The problem is that body of churches allowed too much pastor worship. Like when he died, that said everything to me. Oh, Pastor Chuck. Oh, you ever met him? Nah. Like, why you like? It's okay to be sad.
It was like when Princess Diana died. Yeah,
exactly, dude. Oh no, like the royal baby. Ooh, the Limeys are having another kid. Who gives a crap? You know what I mean? I never met those people. Dude, but with that, it was just like the weeks and weeks of just like and I'm like, you never met the guy. Come on, like. And
then like the legacy that got passed on, like who's gonna take over?
That was a shit show, dude. I remember
100%, because it was like, I knew Chuck. I'm related to Chuck. No, Chuck told me in a meeting one time I'm going to do this.
Dude, the power grab.
Yeah. But it was like, it boiled down to like who was in the closest proximity to Chuck. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, this is not how the church should operate. Nope. Like, Chuck is not Jesus.
Those people
We should be asking, who is the Holy Spirit calling to take
pray
over?
About it. And
But instead it was like, I was closer to Chuck than you were.
Yeah, so I should be further ahead in line.
Yeah.
Like, this ain't the royal family, bud. Like, speaking of Limeys, you know?
Right.
But, no, dude, it's like... Yeah, I feel bad because I'm saying Limey, and it's joking. I have British friends and stuff. I don't want anybody to get pissed off and be like, this guy hates British people. He's a dick. But,
I mean, the second part's true.
Like, yeah, facts. But, no, like, it's... Honestly, if people are that clamoring to get, like, a position of power, they should automatically be disqualified.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that should be grounds for immediately. Your heart is already not in the right place.
Right.
You know, so
so one caution is like if you go to church and the guys there's this one dude in power, run. And the other thing is like, how is the church set up? Like, is there a group of elders who are like making these decisions? You know, like a lot of churches aren't that way. It's the one pastor what he says goes. It's the Moses model. He's like Moses. He comes down the mountain. This is what God says, and you're going to do it.
Yeah, God told me. Also be very careful of people who say God told me.
Yeah,
that is freaking. Sorry, that is freaking so dangerous.
Yeah,
I think the F-bomb there was appropriate because that is the gravity of how dangerous that is.
Yes, 100%.
People who are God told me.
Yeah, that's where the cult stuff comes in,
and runaway pastors who have no accountability. You know what I mean? You need, like you said,
and I mean, you look at Mark Driscoll again. Like, he said that all the time. All the time. God told me.
So dangerous.
Yep. And it was crazy, though, again, we're kind of circling around the same thing, so we'll move on after this, but people long for that. Like, I never even come close to saying things like that, but people have come up to me after the church and be like, hey, did God give you a message? Like how did you become a pastor? Did God speak to you? Like, what was it? I was like, I don't know. I just thought it'd be a good idea. And the church was like, yeah, it sounds good. Go to seminary. And it just was a very natural thing. But people want to hear that kind of stuff.
They do. It's interesting. Did you feel a calling or a tug? I feel like it's more like, I just want to serve. Right. And then God kind of opens those doors and people say, hey, like there's an opening. Would you consider being an associate pastor? Or, it shouldn't be like, hey, I'm working hard and going to school so that I can be a pastor one day. Right. This isn't a career like I look at my career where I'm going to school and stuff. Right. Yep. It shouldn't be like an end goal, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? There should be more of a servant's mind.
Right. Yeah. Charles Spurgeon said, if you can do anything but be a pastor, do that. If it's just like, well, like I had a buddy in seminary who was like really into cars. And I was like, why'd you go to seminary? He's like, well, I always thought it'd be cool to be a mechanic or a pastor, so I'm trying this out to see how it works. And I didn't tell him this, but I think good advice would be try the mechanic thing first. Yeah. If it's like pastor mechanic, do whatever else you can do, because pastoring's hard, and if you're not really called to do it, if you can do anything alongside of being a pastor, I'm not talking about bivocational, but if it's like this or that, you're probably looking at being a pastor for some reason other than, like you said,
servitude.
I just want to serve.
Yeah, dude.
I feel like I just got to do it. I not owe Jesus in a meritorious way, but like I just want to serve him because of what he's done for me.
Yeah.
I long to do this.
You got a heart for serving others and furthering the kingdom. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
So my ADD is going to keep us like circling this train. So if you want to take us to something else.
Yeah. So, so talking about kind of getting back in the church, right? So you got burned, you were adopted, and you're like, great, I got this family, this makes sense. And then they just totally burned you. And that caused a lot of hard things in your life.
Yeah.
You were angry at the church. You were angry at God, you said.
Yeah.
And so first question, I guess, would be how long did it take before you were like, I think maybe going back to church is a good idea?
Well, I would try every once in a while. Like it was a good 3 or 4 years, probably 3 years before I was able to like. And there was a really cool church over in Costa Mesa called First Love. Awesome people. I still keep in touch with one of the pastors there, Ben. I want to talk about some humility, dude. Like that's a lot of former addicts and stuff and recovering addicts. The head pastor there used to be like he did like prison time, dude. And he I don't know when he got saved, but he used to be like a big time like tough guy in like a MC motorcycle club and stuff. And then went to prison for a long time. Was an addict big time, and then like he now runs this recovery program. And they literally like bust a lot of these people in on Sunday. It was rad, dude, because. Like you want to talk about like a group of like some awesome humble people who have been through it, dude. That was a really cool church.
Yeah, I want to go into your story about getting back into church, but you mentioned something I think about all the time, like busting in these people and addicts and stuff in the church. Like, why do you think it's hard for some people to come into church and feel like they belong there? Like a lot of those types of people who are like have rougher lives, they come in, they see everybody with like nice clothes on, and they're like, I don't know if I fit in here.
I'd feel like that. I don't know. Like I don't know. But yeah, I like a little church with us I like a church that's a little more rough around the edges like that.
Right.
Because
do you think as though it's just the way people look, or do you think it's like something else?
I think there's a lot of like stiffness with people. Like you see a guy walk in with a ton of tattoos and maybe, you know what I mean, like a little rougher, you know what I mean? And I think, yeah, it's easy to feel like you don't fit in when everyone else is driving their Mercedes and you know, wearing their freaking $300 like Red Wing shoes and pressed jeans and the freaking, you know, flannel that's all like crisp and a little like
Red Wing
haircut.
shoes cost $300.
Oh yeah, they're expensive as hell, dude.
What is wrong with the world today?
People,
those are like construction worker boots.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's something that I saw a lot in the American church, especially when I was living in Orange County. It's this need to feel like you fit this image, and I always struggled with like I was like, these guys look like donkeys, dude. Your outfit's like $500 to go to church. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, what do you think about though? Like, if you were gonna meet the president, you probably, I don't know, maybe you would go dress like that.
I would definitely dress up.
You put a little collar on, maybe something like that.
Oh yeah, I'd wear a nice button-up shirt, tie, and stuff. But like when people don't feel like it's hard when to identify with people who don't understand your struggles. I think that's where a lot of people. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like an image thing. It's that I have been through this, and it's hard to open up with people who don't get it. And that's what was cool about that
why
church.
do you think like when you walk into some churches, you just assume that they're not going to get it? Because like that happens all the time. I'm not saying you do that, but like I've done that. Like I'm going to church, like, oh, these people don't get me.
Yeah.
Like I feel awkward. I don't want to be here. You know what I mean? Like, is it just the way they dress? Like,
I don't know. Maybe it's just an overall culture, an overall like, you know, just a top down, like just quick looking at like the culture of people. I mean, you would be surprised at how much people have been through.
That's the thing, though. Yeah, because like you go like our church, everybody looks kind of dressed up.
Yeah.
Most people. But a lot of people have been through some crazy stuff. Like people have been in prison and shooting up heroin, and
I just got a little bit convicted on like maybe I do need to step into the church role a little bit more and be a little more active part and quit being a punk, because maybe someone else is missing out on that, and I'm the guy who they need to meet to understand.
That's the other part of it too. Yeah.
So
It can become this like vicious cycle where like. So a church like ours, we're reformed. We have pews. We have an organ, you know, and it's kind of, you've been there.
Yeah.
People dress kind of like this, and if you come in dressed kind of like that, I don't know, like
that's how I came, and
maybe
everybody
tank
was
top and tattoos all over.
Yeah.
Like I'm in a suit, you know, as the pastor, and so like you're gonna come in and feel a little bit awkward, but like I know I could, you know, there's a handful of people in our church who've, like, there's one guy who's like, I was in jail, I got out, I rob somebody, to steal his money, to shoot up heroin. And I was shooting up heroin with somebody, with my buddy, and we were sharing the needle. And later that week, I found out he had AIDS, and somehow I didn't get AIDS. And I was sharing a needle with him, and God saved my life. Like, that's
that's insane.
But you come in, and you're like, oh, these people won't get me.
True.
But, like, that's all below the surface. You know?
True.
So,
yeah, dude, I don't know. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know.
But looking at the guy, you'd never guess it. Like, he's looked like this.
I believe it.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I got a DUI. I've been in trouble with the law. Like, you might not guess it by looking at me.
Yeah. Luckily, I've been able to steer clear of the law, but I've done plenty of hooligan stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, talking about getting back into the church, why have you felt lately like you got burned pretty bad from the church? So why have you had? Do you know why you've been like, yeah, I'm kind of into?
Man, it's just I'm like walking around just convicted all the time because I act like a freaking donkey. You know what I mean?
Just this general feeling of like I should go, like.
Not even that I should go, just that I need to just get right with the Lord and just live better, just live a more like healthy life spiritually.
So you feel would this be a good way of describing it? Like I feel a little bit of anxiety about where my life is, and I feel like being in church would reduce some of that anxiety. Is that a way of putting it? No,
because my life, for all intents and purposes, I'm basically on a rocket ship doing all kinds of cool stuff. Like I'm doing. I work in the automotive industry. I get to go to races all the time. Like I've done racing myself. I just raced in the Baja 500 this year. Like that was a dream of mine. Most people never sniff at that. Like I'm doing cool stuff.
Right.
I'm getting my master's degree. I'm like 8 months out. Like I'm on to doing big things. And from all intents and purposes, I should be happier than a pig in shit. But as my dad would say, the pastor. Yeah,
I think it's pig in the mud, but
maybe
those crap pigs, man.
Yeah, dude. Well, crap. I mean, they poop in the same mud. I mean, then they roll in it. I think that's the thing. But yeah, mine is just it was never. It's just more of like a convicted thing. Like there's that big part of me that's missing, and it's not like I know what it is. I mean, I need more of the Lord in my life, and I'm trying. It's tough, but yeah, I just feel the need to just continue pursuing that because I'm not really like fulfilled.
Okay. Yeah. So one thing we talked about last time, you could share a little bit more about, because I think our audience hopefully will be people. And by the way, like if you're watching this and it's helpful, I hope that you'll like and share this with somebody and subscribe. And also, if you could comment and be like, hey, this is what I like, this is what I didn't like. Yeah. Negative comments are good too. Like we want to learn what's helpful to people. We don't want this just to be for us. It's not for us. It's to help people. So please give us feedback, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. But for a lot of people who are listening to this, I think they're thinking about maybe getting more involved in the church or not. Yeah. And like one of the things that like I'm sure every human thinks about when you're like, do I want to be involved with Christianity or not, is like looking at Christianity and with one eye and then the other eye on worldliness, as we call it, and like, oh man, I could be so much happier being YouTube famous and making money and having a bunch of girls or whatever. And part of your story is that like you kind of did experience that in Florida last time. You were talking about like you were dating girls and like you'd go to
I was dating. Yeah, I did. Yeah,
you'd go to the club or whatever, and like everybody would be like looking at the girl on your arm. The chick I was with,
dude. Yeah. And there was a couple. Yeah, there's been multiple times that like I've dated some. I wasn't always like this out of shape and stuff, and I'd like to think I'm okay looking, But I've dated more than a couple chicks who are really, really pretty, and it's wild because
and that's like the pinnacle of like
everybody thinks that like, oh man, like
getting any better than that.
Like I kid you not, one night I walked in with this chick, and it was a night off. I was walking to the club I worked at just to go get drunk, because I mean $20 I throw the bartender and I can drink all the Jack and Cokes that I wanted, and she's with me and stuff, so she gets the same treatment. But I remember walking in and dudes are just like as we're walking in, like it's crowd's damn near parting, and we're just like, dude. And one guy goes up to me, he goes, "You're the man, bro." And I just was like, "Hey, thanks, brother. Appreciate it, man."
And that's the best that it could get. Like that's what every guy fantasizes.
Oh yeah, about, right? Be the man.
Because it's not only you have what you want, but everybody wants what you have, and they're like patting you on the back, being like, "Great job." You're like you talked about earlier. Guys want that affirmation.
Yeah.
So like, how could it get any better than having this thing that I really, really want, this pretty girl, and I'm getting affirmed by all the guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's a win-win.
Is it? Yeah, but it's, I mean, unless you experience it, like, is that really, like, are you really fulfilled?
Right. So how did you know, like, you experienced that? How did you know, like, this isn't it?
Still felt empty. That was all Band-Aid on a bullet wound, and I tend to do that a lot. I got a lot of bullet wounds, and I got a whole stack of Band-Aids that I try to put on them sometimes, and that's just another thing that, yeah, dude, like I'm a hurting person just like a lot of other people, and I back then was masking my angst with drinking and sleeping with hot chicks. Right. But I was still miserable. I mean, it didn't.
It masks the pain for the night, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, it's still there.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, then you wake up and it's over.
No.
You know what I mean? You're now just chilling, and it's the emptiness is there.
And sometimes it makes it worse because you realize she's doing the same thing. She don't really care about you, and you're like, oh. Now here's another bullet wound.
Yeah. And then it's funny you say that because like some people like to glamorize like, oh, it's great, dude. Like she leaves. You know that there's the old saying like, you don't pay the hooker for the sex, you pay her to leave afterwards. Yeah. It's that sucks. Like for me at least, there was always an empty feeling. Like I've always wanted like a decent relationship and a caring, nurturing, somebody to share life with. You know what I mean? And it sucks when you wake up and they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I remember seeing this chart of Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriends, and so like one bar was his age, obviously, which goes up every year. And his girlfriends were like 24, 25, 25. Like he dates a girl at 22, and then by the time they hit 25, he gets rid of her, and it's just like
it's like 26. I think it's 26 years old is the cutoff for that guy.
Yeah, and people look at that like, oh, that's amazing. He's always with this attractive girl, but it's like, dude. Those girls have seen that chart. Yeah. They know that he's a complete tool just using them, and they're doing the same thing. Yeah. Like, they don't give a crap about Leonardo DiCaprio. The second that they could take all his money and bail, they'd be like, later, bro.
It's a status thing.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, if you put yourself in Leonardo DiCaprio's shoes, it's like, that sucks, man.
Is he really fulfilled?
Like, you have a good-looking human around you, but that's it. Like, she does not care about you. You don't care about her. Like, you're using each other's bodies to feel good for a moment, and then you're on to the next thing. Like, that sucks. Like, I don't know how that's that much better than just having, like, a robot wife, like a sex robot. Like, not to be too gross, but, like, that's basically what we're talking about here. It's like, dude. I'm using this thing, and when it stops pleasing me, I'm throwing it away and get the new model.
Dude, yeah, that's no way to live, dude.
Yeah,
that
doesn't sound very
You're not sharing your life.
Right.
You can go on those cool trips. You can go on that stuff, and you got a hot chick with you, but are you really sharing that experience with her?
Right.
Or is she just there for whenever you get freaking fired up and want to hump on something, and then you're like, cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? That sucks. You're not really sharing that experience. It's funny because, like, talking about, like, hanging out with celebrities and stuff, I knew a guy, and he died in a car accident when I was in Florida. That's one of the things that, like, really changed me and changed my life. But he was working on like a TV script with some of the guys from Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I think it was him who was talking to Drew Carey. And Drew's always been a super nice dude from everybody that I know who's met Drew Carey, nicest guy ever. But he's not like the male specimen. He's not Mark Wahlberg, you know what I mean? And but Drew's one of his things was like, man, like it kind of sucks because there's all these pretty girls that like you, and it makes you go through this dilemma where you wonder, like, is it because of me and who I am, or is it because of who I am, like, in the industry and my money?
Right.
Like, that's Leo's not fulfilled, dude.
Right. And for Drew Carey, like, it's probably a little bit easier because he can see the difference in the mirror. Like, I look like this, she looks like that. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, you go out and look at couples, like, we all, like, tend to find somebody who's in our same attractiveness. Sometimes you outkick your coverage sometimes. But
that's changing. We've talked about it. We got to do we have time to do another one right after this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do, if you got the energy for it, because I think we should go on a dating and masculinity after this.
Okay.
Because we're open in this little can, and I think we're going to get on a roll with that one.
Okay, let's do it.
I think you're absolutely right, dude. It's easier when you're not as good looking of a guy to be like, okay, be more aware, but Leo's a good looking cat.
Right. Yeah. So he might be fooled into thinking like, oh, it's me. But Drew Carey, it's like he knows, like, she's not in it for the looks. Like, guys like me don't pull girls like that, it's got to be the Drew Carey-ness. It's okay. So we'll talk about that later. That's good. But when we're talking about getting back in the church and thinking about it, you said you just feel like this kind of conviction, like you should just kind of do it. You weren't fulfilled in your life before. You're recognizing like this isn't it. And by the way, I just want to say like that's the hand of God in your life. Like,
yeah, I truly think it is.
So many people don't figure that out till they have a midlife crisis or they're like 60 or, and they're like, oh, this isn't fulfilling. And for a lot of them, it's just too late at that point.
Someone actually a couple of weeks ago, it was actually within the last week, was asking me like, you're having anxiety, what, like you having a midlife crisis? Or I said, honestly, I don't think I'm going to have one of those. Because one, I'm always working towards something, whether it's professionally and stuff, but also spiritually, I'm looking for that fulfillment and stuff. But there's no like, oh my gosh, my life is half over. Like statistically speaking, my life is almost half over. Mm-hmm. The average male lives at like what, 75? I'm 35 years old. So I'm inching up to like half of my life being over. That doesn't bother me a bit. Mm-hmm. I've lived enough for like 3 or 4 people's lives. Like the stuff I've done, places I've been, experiences I've had. It's been pretty rad, and but like you said though, it's having like God in my life and having that. There's a level of peace that comes with that, but there's also the conviction of like I could be doing more. I should be doing more. Yeah,
and being, I don't know. The way I think about it is like thinking about life being half over. Like to me, it bothers me only because I wish that I had done more for the Lord earlier in my life. Like now, I feel like my perspective has shifted to where, like when I was younger, it was just have as much fun as possible. And now it's like I'm living really for the next life. Like I don't really care so much about what happens in this life, as long as it's pleasing to the Lord, because the next life I'm going to live forever, and I'm going to be rewarded or not rewarded based on what I do now. And so when I think about like my life being half over, I'm like, dude, I would have done some stuff different. I have regrets. I'm forgiven. I don't have guilt. But I got some regrets, 100%. Yeah. I got a lot of regrets. And when I think about the rest of my life, I'm like, dude, like, I guess just I wish the older me would have gone to the younger me and been like, dude, stop living to like have fleeting pleasures right now, because you'll get older and you'll look back and you'll be like, dude, that was a complete waste.
Yeah.
It's like watching some like SpongeBob. It's like, if you're into that, like no one watches SpongeBob like, oh, that was so great, man. I just feel like developed and fulfilled as a human and smarter. It's like that was like I might as well have been asleep. Like there's just nothing going on in my. It's not doing anything for my life. And I think when we get to those moments where like I want something more, I think that's the hand of God being like, hey man, I got a plan for your life, and like I'm going to do something with your life so that you enter the next life getting a reward for what you've done, and it's evidence that he's working in our lives.
Yeah, and it's well, one, I totally understand what you're feeling, and because I kind of feel that like inkling, like kind of it tries to creep in on me too. Like, man, like how much time you wasted, but man, that's who we are, man.
Yeah,
brought us here. Yeah, if I didn't move to Florida, I wouldn't be here. So I moved to Orange County afterwards, and that's when I met your brother and all those guys.
Right.
So it's
God restores, like God can work in the time that we waste. What I mean? But I think it's a little bit off topic, but that's a very worldly way of dealing with that. It's like, no, spring break 2023, no regrets. Like just don't regret anything, and it's like, I think that's kind of dumb.
Hot girl summer, that kind of stuff.
If you really want to, like you talk about Jocko all the time, it just sounds like something Jocko would say. Like if you really want to improve your life, you shouldn't be like, no regrets in the past. You should like analyze your past and be like, what did I screw up so that I can not screw it up in the future?
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for me, I just try to like see what I can do moving forward. And I am grateful for both the losses and lessons and victories and choices that I made in the past, because I'm not upset at where I am. Yeah. Like, and where I'm going.
Yeah, me either. Like, I'm bummed that I wasted time and waste time all the time, but at the same time, I realize if it wasn't for the grace of God, I would be a homeless, I'd probably be dead by now, if not just like a homeless guy on the street. Yeah. All right, so you're thinking about getting back into church. You said the reason why is because you kind of feel convicted. what, not why, but what do you like about church? So you visit a little bit. Last time you were talking about you have a friend who kind of takes you to church. Like,
Yeah, my
when
buddy.
you go, like, why are you like? Part of me wants to come back.
It's funny because it's like hard to explain some of this stuff, like what conviction feels like, and somebody might be like, oh, it's just anxiety, and no, I already go to therapy and stuff. I'm very self-aware of what anxiety is. You know what I mean? This isn't just anxiety and depression or whatever. Because I know what those are. I have those too.
Not at all, man.
Yeah. But yeah, going. I mean, it's cool to have the little bit of community. It's cool to see friendly faces, and it's cool to just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like the worst, I prefer the worship at your church. I like old school hymns, dude. Love it.
Right.
And this is a little bit more contemporary. It's not full on like Hillsong, because that would have me freaking wanting to step into traffic.
Right.
But
He's talking about the church he's going to. How often would you say you go?
It's been like a month and a half since I've been.
So
But
maybe every couple months or so.
well, I mean, there was a while I was going like for a month and a half straight. So I'm
Okay.
streaky. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I'll get busy. Like sometimes I'll work events and stuff like that, and it'll throw me out of my groove, and then I'll just forget to go the next week, or I'll just go out and be drunk on Saturday and accidentally sleep through my alarm or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But being there, just cool. Like being around other people and like getting the word from a different perspective. The way I read certain scripture and stuff. It's always cool to hear someone else's take on it and what they brought away from it. And it's wild how like you've got all this like scripture dormant in your head that you're not always actively thinking about. But there could be something in your life that a pastor will talk about that's like, damn, dude, like I didn't even think about that. And it's like a kind of like a awakening moment for, the week going forward or the month going forward, like whether it's a lesson to be learned or something you need to work on, or, something that happened like, oh, okay, that may be clarity on something that happened that you were uncertain about that really irked you. There's a lot of, I don't know, I get a lot of that out of it.
Okay. What about the sermon? I think you kind of already tacked that, but like, do you feel like when you hear a sermon, do you feel like the Lord is speaking to you in a way that's distinct from when you're just sitting in your room alone reading your Bible?
Like a little bit like you were saying. I said it was just a different perspective a little bit. It's never like far off night and day, but I mean maybe they come up with an example that damn I never even really thought about that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I read it and yeah, I can see where this applies to my life, but it's like, oh man, well when you put it that way, dude, it applies to this too. Damn. That was a place I was totally missing.
So it gets you thinking about it more.
Yeah, and it basically like just kind of, it's not really a Pandora's box thing. It's not a bad thing. It really just helps improve who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I mean, growing up, one of the arguments, and you still hear it a lot. I mean, it's just a bunch of rules.
Yeah.
But there's something liberating and freeing when you have the peace that you don't let a lot of things like, and it's not easy, obviously, but having the peace, knowing that one, you're not in control.
Yeah.
Two, being equipped to be able to not react in a lot of situations, like not let people have power over how you feel. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's nothing harmful about loving your neighbor and loving people around you. Mm-hmm. There's nothing harmful about that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's just the basics, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, you're talking about there's something freeing about it. Like, I feel like that's a big opportunity for Christianity, and if people are watching this, probably part of the reason why you're coming to this is because you hear society saying like freedom comes from just doing whatever the heck you want. Choose your gender, choose how many partners you want to have, choose what you do, choose what drugs you put in your body. Like it's all about freedom, and a lot of people feel like they're on this sailboat, and it's like the wind's blowing this way and the waves going that way, and I just kind of go around and bob around. And it gets super exhausting because like every day it's like, what gender am I today? What drugs am I going to use? What do I believe today? What's the truth? Whose side am I going to believe? And when you come to Christianity, it's like real Christianity, at least. It's like, dude, we don't really care about, Jesus isn't like, hey, tell me your thoughts about life. And, it's like, here's reality. Like Jesus says, here's reality. Do you want to accept it or not? It's like red pill, blue pill. Like, do you want to know the truth? Like, you don't get to pick. Or you just keep taking the blue pill and like, whatever, I'm just going to believe whatever I want. And there's something freeing about that because you come into church and it's like, hey, here's a liturgy. Like, we're going to go through an ancient liturgy that is designed to shape you, shape the way you think, and shape your soul into somebody that follows God well. And it's not going to be, here's a rock band, and we're going to make music that sounds exactly like what's on the radio, but we're going to tweak some of the lyrics to talk about Jesus as my boyfriend. Like, when you have something different that's just like, this is the way it is and the way it's always been, and like, this is going to shape you. It's like, oh man, I don't need to worry about how I'm going to be, or, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And the biggest thing for me was like God's grace and learning about God's grace.
Yeah. So. Okay, so we're at an hour. So I kind of went on a hobby horse there. Let's see. Do we have time for a few more questions? Or, okay. Our producer. We have a producer.
Mr.
Everybody.
Producer, like Mark Levin.
Our producer is giving us some
Producer.
notes. And we have earpieces in. He's telling me through the earpiece. By earpiece, I mean hand signals. We're not that high tech yet. All right. So let me try to get towards the end of this conversation. Then maybe later we can talk about the other one. But so you're coming to church and you have some reasons why you like it. Let me see. How many of your friends and family go to church? So what did it look like for you? You walked away and then you kind of got brought back by this friend. So could you talk a little bit more about like who were the human beings? Obviously, God is the primary influence, but who are the human beings who helped influence you come back to church?
Well, I got a friend, Christina, great friend of mine. We talk every once in a while. Like, she's married and has kids, so she's super busy and stuff. We've known each other for like, man, I want to say like 15 years. Been really good friends and stuff. And she was a huge part of it because I remember when I was in Florida, dude, I'd be high and just hammered and whatever and like having a good time and stuff. But I would call her and just vent to her for hours sometimes about how miserable I was and how unfulfilled I was. But then I'd get up and do it all again. I mean, looking back, you're like, dude, what are you doing? You know
what would she say when you're like, I got high and drunk and slept with some girl and I'm miserable?
She was awesome because she would just listen and just be encouraging.
How would she encourage you? Like, go just try it again tomorrow night?
No. She's, she'd be like, well, we call each other buddy. We've always, and she'd like, buddy, like, basically she was like my therapist. You know what I mean? She knew that I knew where I needed to be and what I needed to do, but it was more like just being patient and just basically just praying for me.
So what do you think your response would have been? Because a lot of Christians hear that and they think, well, you got to tell them the truth and like you're sinning. And which I don't disagree with. Like, we need to talk about sin,
right?
But like, what if she was like, "Bro, you're sinning. You need to repent and come back to the Lord." What would your response have been?
I'd have been like, "Yeah, I know, But the thing is, she knew that I knew. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? She knew that I knew, and it wasn't going to help to just hammer me over the head with something that I already know. Mm. I think she was just loving me and praying for me, and sometimes, man, you'd be amazed at how much that can do for somebody. You know what I mean? Just being loving and being there for them. And
so it was more like an implicit invitation to come to the church that she was making by telling you she loves you, rather than like pointing the finger like you need to get back.
Right, exactly. It was just being there and being a good friend and praying for me. And yeah, I mean, that was huge. And then my buddy and his wife, I go to church with them and stuff. And, his wife was like, hey, I'm going to keep bugging you to go to church, because if I don't go for a couple of weeks, she'll be like, because we have dinner all together every Tuesday. It's awesome. They got their 2 kids. It's great. Really helps me through the week. I don't know if they understand like how much that helps me through the week. But and get through life. But she's always, hey, we're not at church. But a few weeks ago, she said, I'm gonna keep, hope it doesn't, just because I love you,
Yeah.
I don't want to bug you, but I'm gonna keep, inviting you. And I was like, honestly, it doesn't bug me at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't bug me at all. Sometimes I honestly just forget. Sometimes I'm being an idiot and I just don't want to go.
Right.
I want to get drunk on Saturday night before instead of going to church in the morning.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. It reminds me of Rosaria Butterfield's book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key. She was a flaming lesbian professor at NYU or Syracuse University, and she was like lesbian studies type of thing. I can't remember. She was actually English, but she was like
Gender studies, like extraordinaire. Yeah.
And she became a pastor's wife, like got straight. And that transition happened because she went to this other pastor's house when she was a flaming lesbian to do a hit piece on him. On like, this is how bigoted Christians are, and write a newspaper article. And he's like, yeah, you want to interview me? Come over for dinner. I'll make you dinner. And like, he's just super nice and loving to her and invited her back. And then she's like, oh, I thought you were going to yell at me and tell me what a terrible person I am, but you're just being nice to me. And now she's like hardcore conservative, like Orthodox, Reformed Presbyterian pastor's wife.
Oh,
and
wild.
like her job is like, she goes out now and talks about how homosexuality is a sin, but like how to tell people that in a loving way. And your friend kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she knew that what I was doing, partying around, sleeping around, and I knew it was sin too, but it wasn't just beating me on the head with what I already know. I mean, all that would do is just drive me probably further into it. Right.
So if you had to give some advice or thoughts to somebody who's watching this and like, I'm on the fringe of the church, I kind of go, I kind of don't, I'm thinking about it, what thoughts or advice would you have for somebody like that?
One, like, not all churches are the same. And when I say that, I mean, just because one doesn't necessarily feel right or work out for you it's okay to like try another one.
Yep.
One
of the beauties of being in America, there's a church in every corner. Just try good ones. Don't go to the ones that have the little golden angels on top. The Mormons or Jehovah's
with the
Witnesses.
trumpet.
Don't do it. Yeah.
The Latter-day Saints. Yeah.
If it's got Reformed in the title, try that one out for sure. They're great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just try reading your Bible, even if it's just a chapter a day or a couple paragraphs a day, and then just pray about it, dude, and just check out a church, and see what happens. I mean, just because one church sucks doesn't mean they all suck.
Right. Okay. And then what about whether you've been burned by the church or not? I have a friend who it was really hard for her to go to church. Not because she was burned by the church, but because her mom almost died of like a heart thing, like during COVID. And so for whatever reason, she kind of associated that with church. Like I think she got sick in a crowd. And so like she would get into the parking lot at church and she would just like have this panic attack. And a lot of times she'd be like, all right, I'm out. And she'd go back home. So I think a lot of people experience that physical anxiety when they're in the parking lot or walking into the church. What about that? Like, what would you say?
I get it every time. Like when I was just starting to go back to church with my buddy and his wife, like I almost turned around and the place is 7 minutes door to door. Like it's literally like 3 miles away. And I was about halfway there and I was like, I started like feeling and thinking back to like the past, and I was like, Rob, just suck it up. Like, not that that's the answer for everybody. I'm not telling everybody, like, don't be a bitch, get in there. It's just, honestly, it's hard, but it's like kind of like jumping in a cold pool. Once you learn to master just getting over the apprehension and you just freaking do it, step through the doors and you'd be surprised. It's what I tell people with people who are very apprehensive when it comes to like Christians and stuff. And also when it comes to politics and people of the other political party. Like, just go freaking talk to your neighbors, dude. Just go talk to people. You'll find that most people or if they're a different political ideology, or if you're like, for example, if you're, in this case, apprehensive about going to church because you feel like you might be judged, try meeting them. Yeah. Because until you actually meet them, you don't know a damn thing about them.
Yeah, that's good advice. Especially today, like, society is so trained on being politically correct and polite. Like, most people, even if they're like completely opposite of you ideologically, they're going to be nice to you.
Yeah.
The vast majority. The worst that you'll typically see is someone will just be like, hey, okay, thank you. And they'll just kind of leave and kind of give you the cold shoulder. But no one's going to scream at you. No one's going to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you're not going to get like,
Like we walked around here in our neighborhood and handed out flyers to come to a church event. And I was like buckling up. I was like, someone's going to call me a racist or a bigot or a Christian bigot or whatever. Everybody was super nice.
That's cool.
I was shocked.
Go meet your neighbors. So I tell people, go meet your neighbors.
And it's the same thing with coming to church. Like, people might look mean, but like, most people are going to be nice. Some won't give you the time of day, but like, no one's going to chase you out with a broom or something. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you, Rob, for bearing your soul. Tell us a little bit
Appreciate
about
it. Yeah, hopefully I didn't get too long-winded with some of that stuff.
No, yeah, hopefully neither of us did. But if anybody is watching this, first of all, thank you very much for patiently enduring our terrible podcast. And please, though, if you are watching, like, give us some feedback. If you're like, this sucked, I was very bored, I only watched 2 minutes, like, that would be helpful feedback. If it was helpful, if you could tell us why, that'd be helpful as well. And also, if you could like this, we are literally nobodies. Like, YouTube does not even know we exist, and there is absolutely no chance anyone else will ever see this. It's a miracle you're watching this. If you are not someone that I directly sent this link to that I know, it's a miracle you're watching this if you just found this on YouTube.
That's a fact.
So if you found this by miracle and you're like, hey, this was actually kind of helpful, could you please like it and subscribe to our little thing here, our channel, and share it with somebody? Because that's the only way that people will see this. So thank you very much.
I was going to say, and if there's anything that you want us to go more in depth on that we were kind of skating over, because we talked about a lot, but if there's anything that maybe piqued your interest, and just let us know, and we're more than happy to dive more into that. I mean, we've got plenty of experiences and stories. I mean, what was it Indiana Jones said? It's not the years, honey, it's the miles. And I know this old rig's got some miles on it. I've been through some stuff, and you have too. So we've got plenty of, we can dive definitely more into our experiences. And if there's anything helpful that you'd like to know more about, let us know.
Okay, before we turn it off, let me pray for you, Rob, and anybody watching. Lord, we thank you for this time we got to spend talking about the church. Lord, you're sovereign over all things. This is all part of your plan. And Lord, we just rest in that, knowing that you have a good plan for your children. I pray that you'd bless Rob and me and Jeff, our producer, and anybody watching this. Lord, would you bless them and help them to experience the love and the peace of Jesus Christ? We pray this in his name. Amen.
Amen.